dedication, courage, determination, control, desire. And our goal is to channel that energy. To champion the nation's best aquatic athletes, support the teams who support them, inspire anyone and everyone to feel the benefits of a love of water and propel each sport onwards and upwards, or even downwards, but doing it the right way, sustainably, with integrity, with purpose. Because the thrill of seeing Great Britain being great at aquatic sport is something everyone is excited about. We are Aquatics Jubilee.
Well, welcome to day 2 of the Speedo Aquatics GB Diving Championships here at the Sandwell Aquatics Centre in Birmingham. We had our first stage of action yesterday with the men's 3-metre springboard and the women's platform prelims. Those finals to come tonight, but we start this morning with the 10-metre platform synchro final for the men before the women's 3-metre springboard prelims. So our first finals of the competition, and this is our first diving competition since the rebrand to Aquatics GB. We can take a look forward at what's in store for the future of the sport here in the UK.
We know what it takes to achieve a dream. Dedication, courage, determination, control, desire. And our goal is to channel that energy. To champion the nation's best aquatic athletes, support the teams who support them, inspire anyone and everyone to feel the benefits of a love of water, and propel each sport onwards and upwards, or even downwards, by doing it the right way, sustainably, with integrity, with purpose. Because the thrill of seeing Great Britain being great at aquatic sport is something everyone can get excited about. We are Aquatics GB.
So that a taste of what's in store in the future for the sport under the banner of Aquatics GB. Well, alongside myself, Ellen Ellard, for the next 3 days is Olympic silver medalist, multiple world and European medalist Leon Taylor. Leon, we had our first taste of action yesterday, and here is what is coming up today. Starting very shortly with the men's platform synchronised final, followed by the women's 3-metre springboard prelims. And expecting a bit more tasty action today as well.
Yeah, we've got the finals this evening, which of course we enjoyed the prelims for last night, and there was plenty of action to observe and insights to draw from the various athletes performing yesterday. We've got a quite short competition coming up, the men's 10-metre synchronised platform. Of course, all synchronised teams in the diving have been selected already for the Olympic Games. The announcement was a number of weeks ago, and so therefore we are low in numbers in the next competition. In fact, we have one pair.
And we spoke yesterday quite a lot about how the importance of these athletes having an opportunity to have a run out, so to say, have an opportunity to dive under pressure. You know, the pressure maybe not so there, but they're still performing in front of judges in competition experience, and that is really useful for these athletes.
Yeah, completely. Whenever you get a chance to compete, wherever you are in your career, right, you know, it's a great opportunity to take what you do in training every single day and put it in the arena where it counts. So under the watchful eye of the judges, in front of the spectators, making it count, of course. Each of the divers in the synchro, you get one shot at each of your dives. It's the cumulative score. It's not like the long jump or the javelin where you get to do, you know, whatever, and then as long as you get one right, you're okay. It's that consistency and performing under pressure, and that's what we're going to be seeing throughout the competitions.
Absolutely, particularly when we look at our women's 3-metre springboard prelims. We've got those coming up as well. Yesterday was a great taste of how close it can get at the top of the prelims, and also how important the prelims are for then going into the finals that we'll see for these events tomorrow. So just remind us the importance for the 3-metre springboard prelims for the women on finishing high in the order and how that affects where they'll dive tomorrow.
That's right. So we dive in reverse order of the rankings for the prelims. So you're looking for a number of reasons. You want to be able to prove that you can dive consistently. The selectors take that into account. There are some suggested scores that they will be looking for. So what you want to remember really is that the Olympic Games prelims, you've got to make it through. So you've got to be diving well from the get-go. You can't just save it all for the final, although the fireworks do tend to go off in the finals. So if you are listening and viewing now, please join us for the finals as well, because that's where the medals are obviously awarded. The prelims don't actually carry from a score point of view. It's just your ranking by reverse order.
Yeah, Absolutely, and we talk about the medals there. We've also got the qualifying, like we've mentioned on a number of occasions, for the Olympics, for the European Championships, and the British Championship medals at stake as well. And earlier, Leon, you caught up with Tim Jones, the Associate Performance Director for Aquatics GB.
Okay, I'm here with Tim Jones, Associate Performance Director to Aquatics GB. Tim, that's a mouthful of a job title. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, okay, so I've been in the business for 11 years now. We operated across our three funded sports, so the ones that are invested by UK Sport, as pretty separate silos for a good period of time. And then, as most businesses does, we went through a restructure a couple of years ago, and we moved from separate performance directors for each of our sports to two of us working across three sports. So in essence, I work closely with Chris Spice. So Chris is the performance director. He works directly with swimming. I work with Olympic diving and paraswimming as well. So in essence, I strategically lead those two sports. I operate in diving with a team of 5 of us. So there's myself. I work with Alexi, who's the head coach. I have a pathway lead, Jen Leeming, who joined us this year. I have a business manager, Claire Hartley, and a science and medicine lead, Matt Ashman. So I guess my job is to just to oversee the whole of our programme, to make sure the money works, to report back to UK Sport, make sure the board and the CEO of British Aquatics are comfortable with what we're doing. And we just aim to drive the programme forward so that we're not just happy being a top 3 nation in the world, but we're aspiring to be even better than that.
Well, we're talking about aspiring, aren't we? Olympic selection, Olympic spots up for grabs here in Sandwell this weekend. Can you tell us a bit about the selection policy? I know the synchro teams have already been selected, so individual spots up for grabs?
Yeah, so look, when we wrote the policy, we gave ourselves some flexibility to be able to select the synchro element early. I think it became quite clear once we were past the World Championships in February as to what those teams were going to look like. So it didn't make sense for us to hold out on that at all. So in early April, we met and we nominated to the BOA, and then selected 8 divers. So those are divers with a tremendous amount of recent form. So we've medalled at one of the last 2 World Championships in each one of those events. So we've got some high hopes for our synchro teams. That means that we've got 8 athletes that already know they're on the train to Paris. And we've got the flexibility now to add however many more athletes we need to add to fill the individual slots. Now, some people are obviously going to double up. So we've got some people that can synchro and do individual. We've got other athletes like Anthony Harding, who's just a synchro athlete. So, you know, we're looking for 2 places.
So how many spots do you think will be total Olympic team?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we're likely to add a minimum of 3 additional individual athletes, but it could be up to 5. I think it is. But I don't want to preempt what happens this weekend.
And when will the team be announced? Do you know that yet?
Yeah. So we'll meet on Sunday night. We'll nominate to the BOA on Monday. We'll inform the athletes on Monday. There's always this little sort of period of time where we can't announce things publicly, but the people that need to know will know right at the start of next week.
And finally, what are you most looking forward to this weekend in Sandwell?
Look, I just want the divers to be at their best, to make our decisions as a nomination panel as difficult as possible. You know, so look, that always brings its challenges, but the better they perform, the more challenging it is for us. But, you know, hopefully that means that we're going to be at our best in Paris.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Well, I think the really nice bit of that is his call to the athletes to make their job difficult when it comes to selection, Leon. It's always tough, isn't it, when you're picking the athletes who are going to go off to the major championships, but that extra drive to be like, let's get the depth of British diving as good as it can be, so you're making our challenge of selection even more difficult. I think that's a really good call to action.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it speaks to the depth that we have in the majority of the events, actually. I mean, it's not a great lead into the next event because we're not displaying our depth, to be fair. There's plenty of athletes out there who could have chosen to compete in the Synchronised event in the men's platform, but because of the timing, because of the Olympic selection and various other programs, people prioritising other contests and or individual events, so we're only going to see 1 pair in the next event.
So yeah, just 2 athletes competing as a pair, so 1 duo in this final, guaranteed the gold medal. But then, as we mentioned yesterday, you know, with the women's platform, all the athletes were guaranteed a place in the final, and sometimes you just see the athletes diving with a bit more freedom when they haven't got that pressure of where they're going to medal, whether they need to get into a final, and we could see some of their best dives.
Yeah, well, here's the other side of it. Because they're the only ones in it, they might put more pressure on themselves and falter. So that's the great thing about watching live sport, particularly a cruel sport in some ways like diving, where you don't get another shot. You know, in synchronized diving, you've got to be in time and as well as executing the dives as well as you can, and you can't account for what's happening next to you. So the person next to you might make a slight error, timing or execution wise, and that can throw your performance under the bus.
Well, there we can see our judges on the far side in a bit of a different situation. We'll give you a bit of a picture of the pool. The judges on the far side are up in the stands, whereas those down on the near side of the pool are in their traditional chairs. And Leon, we've upped the number of judges in this one to 11. As you can see there, our judges on the near side in their traditional chairs, painted, well, nice and pink. It fits in with the surroundings, doesn't it, with the dressing of the pool. But we've upped the number of judges because this being a synchronised event, they're looking for the synchronisation as well. Yeah,
you've got judges who are solely focusing on and awarding marks specifically for execution. So you've got several judges on one side looking at the execution of the diver closest to them, same deal on the other side, and then you've got a split of judges on both sides looking only at synchronisation. So this is why when you see the marks, and this is our job, Ellen, is to, you know, disseminate exactly what's going on, because you see an unusual selection of marks, because some judges are only marking execution, others are marking synchronization, and sometimes, more often than not, it can take some explaining. So we'll do our best.
We'll do our best, because it does change the way they take the average as well. And obviously for the past, well, if you were watching yesterday, we could say, you know, they exclude the top and bottom. It is different in this one, but we will take you through that as it happens. That is our pair. You can see the athlete who just turned to face us. That is Shane McConnell. We saw him dive yesterday in the individual springboard event. He's got a lot of depth to his diving. And his partner today, Angus Menmuir, an individual finalist at the Commonwealth Games and multiple Scottish champion, and it doesn't get more Scottish than that, does it?
The tartan budgie smugglers. So as they make their way up the stairs, there we are. Look at that, the crowds coming in on this Friday morning. Wonderful to see, clearly from one of the local schools, loving their time. I wouldn't keep those hoodies on for too long, gang. There we are. This is the excitement of coming into a sporting arena, is that you get to be part of the action. Well, keep up the cheering, boys and girls. Wonderful.
Well, this might be the exception, you know, always forced to keep the blazers on in the school playground, but this might be the exception where they're allowed to loosen the ties and slip the blazers off with the heat in the pool today. But as we had yesterday as well, plenty of friends and family and representatives from the diving clubs. You'll hear it as we head into the women's 3-metre prelims. A lot of support for the various diving clubs. So here we go, our first dive from our only pair in this final, our first final of the weekend. They'll be taking on an inward dive in the piked position. Shane McConnell, Angus Menmuir, representing Edinburgh Diving Club.
So as a quick reminder, the first 2 rounds of dives are the required dives, limited degree of difficulty to 2.0, then the remaining 4 are the optional dives. So this is the first required dive, and as Ellen said, it's an inward dive in the piked position. Ready? Yep. 1, 2, 3, go. So we are looking for a mirror image of each other, and so you don't need to be a diving expert to see whether there was any mistiming going on there. And I feel from a synchronization, Angus was just marginally in front of Shane there as he hits the water right of our screen, so the judges will clearly see that. They don't get the pleasure of the replay like we do. They get to mark directly in the moment. Other than the slightly mistimed entry into the water, the alignment was good, the movement from the pike into the entry was good. So the synchro marks, which are on right of screen, 6.5 to 7.5, and you can see very clearly broken down in this excellent graphic, execution 1, execution 2. So again, highest and lowest are removed from each, and then highest and lowest on the synchronization removed. Some very basic averaging out mathematics in place to get 43.2.
So 43.2, the opener for Shane McConnell, Angus Memmier. Well, Leon, how can you mitigate against that timing where someone is going into the water first?
Yeah, I mean, look, the secret to synchronized diving is as simple as this. Are you ready? Yes. 1, 2, 3, go. But maybe we saw Angus go on the G of go rather than the O of go, causing that fraction of difference. But it's really clear to see, isn't it? So once you set the dive in motion, you can't accelerate through the air any quicker. There isn't anything you can do to close that gap. So it is all on that repetition, repetition, repetition.
There's no going back once you start the countdown. How long will it take to find these pairs? Is it something that you experiment with a number of different pairs? I suppose, particularly when we look into the other synchronised finals that we've got coming up over the course of the weekend, you see that some of these pairs have been diving together since they were tiny.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hardest part of the synchronised diving event is the execution of these really complex, difficult dives. So once you've got those down, then it's quite straightforward for the coaches to do a bit of partner swapping, so to speak. So it's kind of like trying it with different people, seeing how well you match, how well you gel, whether there's much technical change needed. The guys at the back of the board there, you can see they're just, they're kind of deciding how quickly they want to go. Looks like they're ready.
Yeah, they're in control here, aren't they? Being the only pair in this final. And their second dive will be a back dive piked.
So second dive, a back dive in the pike position once again. A reminder, it's limited degree of difficulty to 2.0. So these are the most aesthetically pleasing dives. There's not much going on by way of rotation. You see divers reaching up, touching their toes together, out of the dive together. The only difference on the synchro, discrepancy on the synchro there, is the differing distance from the diving board. So probably going to earn 7s on synchro again. And then the execution, again, you can see the judges making a fair assessment on both of those individual divers.
Well, you're absolutely bang on there when it came to your predictions there, Leon. 43.8. For their second dive, and this is where we start to ramp up the difficulty a little bit. And as we mentioned yesterday, the order that they go in here, that's up to them, and they get to choose whether they want to build into a more difficult dive or whether they want to get it out of the way to start with. And looking at the order here, they're going to go from a 3.0 up to a 3.2, and then it goes just a fractional bit easier after that.
Yeah, so it depends really. So the degree of difficulty obviously is an assessment on how difficult the dive is, but that doesn't necessarily mean a diver will find it difficult. So some people have different preferences when it comes to the groups of dive. You'll notice, as I mentioned in yesterday's coverage, you have to cover different groups of dives. So you can see they've done an inward dive so far, they've done a backward dive, then they're moving on to forwards, then they do another inward, but then they do reverse, and then they do a twist. So they cover 5 of the 6 groups. You do not have to do the arm stand group in the synchro, because that would be mega difficult. I've seen it done, but it's nice that it's not in the format. So the guys are following their kind of pre-dive routine, and normally with other competitors in, they would be doing, the preparations, making sure that they're mentally as well as physically prepared. So you don't want to be going too quickly because you'll be marginally fatigued, but you don't want to be taking time too much because you get too dry and a little disconnected from that flow.
Because we are going through this quite quickly in comparison to what we expected. They have been allowed the time in equivalent to what they would have had if there was more divers in this competition, but they're flowing through it quite quickly at the minute. This their third dive, forward 3.5 somersaults in the pike position.
So they're just measuring out their run up there. You can see, even though they've done this dive many times, they're just a bit like a long jumper, just making sure they're the correct distance from the board. These guys making sure. Well, you see the oohs and the ahs from our wonderful crowd here this morning at Sandwell Aquatics Centre. It is impressive, isn't it? You open up with the required dives, and now look at this, 3.5 somersaults in the pike position, and that synchros from a spin speed is bang on. The execution of both dives by both divers is under par. Shane particularly landing very short of vertical, getting a slap on the top of his thighs. So you'll be able to see the lower marks, 4.5 from the execution too, which is for Shane, who made a big error. And that translates into not being synchronized when one is short of vertical and one is vertical.
48.6, Shane McConnell, Angus Menmuir, our only pair in the men's 10-metre synchro final.
Is it worth us mentioning the synchronized pair who are going to be competing in Paris? Because, of course, the teams have been selected, and because they've been selected, they're not required to perform here in this beautiful pool.
Absolutely, and that is a pair of Tom Daly and Noah Williams, who this duo came second to it in the British National Cup in Edinburgh in December. But yeah, Tom Daly, Noah Williams, we've seen Noah already. We spoke to him yesterday poolside. But Tom not making the trip over.
That's right. So Tom now is toing and throwing from LA, which is where his husband and 2 children are based. It's been a change since the last cycle, where the whole family were based here in London, and his husband was working, keeping LA time and living in the UK. Now it's reversed. So Tom is the one doing the travelling, which means that it's quite an undertaking. And having focusing only on the synchro with Noah. Tom recently turned 30 years old, so he's a granddad now. He won't mind me saying that. That's how he referred to me for many years. But in diving terms, his 5th Olympic Games, truly incredible. First British diver ever to compete at 5 Olympic Games. What an achievement already. But of course, he's going in alongside Noah, and they've won medals at the recent World Series. And I'm not going to go through, but they're definitely in with a very strong chance of, once again, for Tom, standing on that Olympic podium when it comes to the end of July, which is when the men's synchro is.
Yeah, that gold medal in Tokyo, I'm sure, very, very sweet indeed, but we know how important his family are to him. It must have been hard to not have them there with obviously the restrictions in the Tokyo Olympics, so he'll want to share that moment with his family in Paris. So on to our 4th dive for this pair, an inward 3.5 somersaults in the tuck position. Our first tuck dive for these two.
Ready? Yep. 1, 2, 3, go. Wow, what a dive. That is their most complicated dive, their highest degree of difficulty at 3.2. And you clearly hear that Angus is the 1, 2, 3 go, and the way they go exactly the same time. Pretty good from a synchro point of view, and well executed. So that's definitely a step up. That's their most difficult dive, and they will have scored nearly double what they scored on their 3rd round dive. So stepping it up. Well done, boys.
Yeah, big dive score, 70.80, and like you say, Leon, that is a huge step up, just shy of double what they've scored before, and that'll give them confidence as well going into these last 2 dives. They are going through this with pace, aren't they? And I suppose, you know, when it's in their control, it's just about finding a rhythm that suits them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really nice position to be in, actually. Just kind of trot up the steps as if you're in training, and then you just get to nod to the referee whenever you're ready, and the referee responds. Whereas normally in a contest with multiple competitors or pairs, you are, you know, following the flow of the timing, which is, you know, set by the referee and by broadcast and by all the other machinations. So yeah, it's quite unusual for a diving pair to be in charge of everything, including when they decide to go or not.
Well, they guarantee the gold medal, so diving with a number of levels of freedom with what you've just said in mind.
Yeah, and they're diving well too. This is a relatively young pair, both of them, you know, at 19 and 21 respectively. So they've got potentially plenty of years left. We never really know, do you, from an injury or a performance point of view, whatever else might come in. But it's yeah, it's great to show their current standard to this crowd, to the judges who are here at the British Championships.
Because we spoke about it yesterday, didn't we? And displaying consistency isn't just over the course of a series of 6 dives, it's over the course of a season and even a couple of years. So
Agreed.
them actually coming out and performing consistently here could stand them in good stead for the future. This, their penultimate dive, 2.8 the difficulty, reverse 2.5 somersaults in the tuck position.
So they're very well matched, not only their tartan budgie smugglers that we've already mentioned, but height, stature. Oh, Angus just out a little bit early on his reverse 2.5. Shane waiting perfectly and timing his exit from the dive. It looks really cool when you get this in sync, because they're coming through. Here's the double somersault, both kicking down at the water. Angus just losing form. He's right of screen, so had to arch the dive to get it in to vertical. You just see his ambitious on his exit there. Both marginally short of vertical. I think the synchro's good. What are they going to go with? Oh, they caned them on the synchro. I'm not sure why that was. I thought they were both reasonably synchronized, even though the dives weren't executed better than 5.5.
44.52 for their penultimate dive. Just one more to go for this pair, guaranteed the gold medal. And they make their way up the steps for one final time. I suppose being so well matched when it comes to height and size, they're just not having to make those adjustments that you might have to do if there's a discrepancy when it comes to, you know, those measurements.
Yeah, it kind of takes care of itself, but it's from a judging point of view. If you're looking up and you've got very similar, you know, bodies standing next to each other, then it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? From certainly from the execution judges aren't looking at that. They shouldn't be paying any attention to the other person. They're just marking the diver closest to them, whereas the synchro judges have just got to be ignoring the execution to some extent and just looking at are these two bodies doing the same thing at the same time.
So a task not just for our divers today, but also for our judges to have to flick between that mentality.
Exactly. The hardest task is there's 11 judges and there's one of me, so I'm having to do the execution, the synchro.
Well, you've predicted almost every single one of those dive scores perfectly, Lon, I have to say. So you're doing a great job at the maths and being a very well-established expert here in the commentary box. Well, this is the last time that we'll see the boys up to the top platform. Their final dive, a forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, height 2.9 the difficulty. You want to go out on a high, don't you, Leon?
Yeah, I guess they've ordered their dives in the order, so you would predict that this is one of their steadiest ones, or their favourite indeed. But of course, just because it's your favourite doesn't mean it's going to go well. And let's see how our final dive. Yeah, it's spectacular, isn't it? You can hear the children in the audience wooing, and you know, to watch two athletes just bounce up off a platform, wrap up into a twist, and then complete the rest of the 2.5 somersaults. When you're not used to it, it is certainly a spectacle, and it's been a very good showing today from Angus and Shane. Some, wow, works in progress, some potential. I think they're going to break 300, which is a very commendable score, and there's a future for these two in this synchronized diving event on the platform.
So we'll wait for confirmation of their dive score and their total score, guaranteed the gold medal. But they've shown up today and performed consistently, this Scottish duo. Well, a dive score of 53.94 and a total, like Leon rightly said, breaking 300, 304.14. Shane McConnell, Angus Memmier will take a moment to chat to their coaches before being taken over to collect their medals. This, of course, the Speedo Aquatics GB Diving Championships. We'll talk a lot about the Olympics, we'll talk about the European Championships as well. But for a few of these athletes, their focus will just be on trying to get onto the podium and take home those coveted British medals. Well, there may be some of the stars of the future, Leon. We mentioned it yesterday. It's not always a Route 1 entry into the sport. You know, a lot of these athletes will maybe have been gymnasts from an early age and then scouted into diving, or have family members who are divers and connected to the sport. But I've got a friend who's just started diving again at the age of, well, I say again, she was a gymnast before, started diving at the age of 23. So you never know who you're going to inspire, and there's a crowd today full of children and potentially the next generation.
Yeah, and isn't it fantastic? This facility now is 2 years old. There's a beautifully growing diving program, Learn to Swim, Learn to Dive program here at the Sandwell Aquatics Centre. And who knows, some of the children that are in shot there, they could be making the decision, oh, I want to give that a go.
Well, we can go down poolside. Max has got Shane McConnell and Angus Memmier.
Well, Angus, Shane, congratulations, gold medalists, British champions. First of all, Angus, slightly different looking final. Was it harder to adapt, and how did you adapt to less time between dives there?
It was definitely much harder. That's the first time I've been the only synchro pair in a competition, so it's tough. We did the best we could, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with how we dived.
You were a Commonwealth Game finalist here 2 years ago. What were you thinking as you came into the venue today?
Not sure really, just the usual. Yeah. Make sure I have enough breakfast and try not to splat.
Shane, let's talk about your fourth dive, the inward 3.5. Was that what you were happiest with?
Yeah, inward is probably the one that I feel I'm most confident with. I've been doing it for surprisingly one of the longest in my list. So I was happy with it. I know I can do it better, but I'm not going to be bummed out about how it went.
And speaking of synchro, do you guys now hang out, spend time together, or not?
Occasionally. You know, we both coach together, so sometimes after training or whatever, we'll stay around in the gym, write our sessions, coach, and then sometimes go out or whatever. But yeah.
Well, enjoy your day. Congratulations, Shane McConnell and Angus Memmier, gold medalists in the men's 10-metre platform synchronised final.
Well, the medals being presented, we have medal bearers today, Seth Garrett and Zach Dudley from Gospel Oak School. Well, so nice for these school children to have an opportunity to meet the athletes, hand over the medals, and there they are, your champions in the men's 10-metre synchro, Shane McConnell, Angus Memmier, representing Edinburgh Diving Club. So that our first final of the 4 days. Plenty more to come this evening. Up next, though, we have the women's 3-metre individual prelims. And we'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back to day 2 of the Speedo Aquatics GB Diving Championships here at the Sandwell Aquatics Centre in Birmingham. We started this morning with a 10-metre platform synchro final for the men. The first of our finals today. We will have finals in the men's 3-metre springboard and women's platform later this evening. Next up, though, is the women's 3-metre springboard prelims. Up as our final event of the morning session, alongside myself, Ellen Ellard, for the next 3 days is Olympic silver medalist, multiple world and European medalist Leon Taylor. Well, the crowd, Leon, starting to build. We've got some brilliant school groups in, and they're making a lot of noise indeed, and that just builds the atmosphere for us and for the athletes.
Yeah, it's nothing quite like diving in front of an audience. If they're diving, familiar with diving, great, and if they're not, even better, because they don't know the kind of, not the rules, but the etiquette, right? So diving can sometimes be a bit like Wimbledon. It's like a bit like, okay, everyone be quiet, yeah. Whereas I quite like the raucous kind of netball vibe that sometimes comes in when spectators are coming in and thinking, oh, how do I behave here? You know, it's great. Look at those kids still with their jumpers on. I don't know how they're managing that, but they're loving being in this beautifully rejigged Sandwell Aquatics Centre, of course, from the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. And here it is in its legacy mode, and great to see it dressed beautifully in the Aquatics GB new branding.
There's been some interesting dance moves, certainly some that you wouldn't see at Wimbledon, I think, out there. But the really nice thing, particularly for that men's synchro final on the platform that we saw just earlier today, is they loved every single dive, and they didn't care about the scores. They just screamed as soon as they saw something that was impressive, and that's so nice for the athletes as well, to have that boost and have that support.
Yeah, completely. You know, you do a lot of diving in silence.
Yeah.
So training, you know, you're getting a ripple of applause from your teammates when you do something, but there's nothing quite like a bit of shouting and screaming to honour your effort, whether it was below average or above average.
Particularly nice considering we only had one pair guaranteed a gold medal. It just brought up the atmosphere. And here we can see the athletes starting to come out for our women's 3-metre prelim. Well, Ulian, run us through the big names. Who are we looking out for in this one?
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning Deshawn there, who is coming towards us, giving us a wave. She will be looking to perform at her best. The Olympic qualification, of course, available. You've got Yasmin, so right on cue. She's already been selected for the 3-metre synchro, which obviously in Paris alongside Scarlett New-Jensen. And then further down in the list, who will be, you know, a slightly later start order, Grace Reed, who is, well, has been established in the sport in this event for many, many years, competed to Scotland at Commonwealth Games when she was a very tender age a long time ago, all the way back in Delhi, so in 2010, so it shows you how long ago that was. So she is, here she is, Grace Reed, always so wonderful in her demeanour, loves to be here, loves to dive, and great to see. And there's Amy Rollinson as well, who recently competed at Commonwealth Games, and we've got lots of talent in this field.
Absolutely, and it's really interesting, exactly what you mentioned, because you look at the ages and you think, wow, some of these are incredibly young, and then you look at their CVs, and they've already got Commonwealth Games, some of them might even have Olympics, and really, age, it's not a barrier in this sport to big performances. Well,
in fact, you know, gymnastics and diving often lend themselves to quite an early start in one's competitive career and breakthrough moments. Of course, referring to Tom Daley, made the Olympic Games team at 14, way back in 2008 in Beijing. So what we're seeing is a sport, and sport's really punishing as well, so your body can't handle it for that long, so it's not unusual for retirement from the sport in your 20s.
But then also, you know, when we talk about Tom, so nice, like we mentioned earlier, him continuing into, you know, into his 30s, to see him performing, the improvements in physiotherapy and how these athletes are taking care of themselves is also allowing for longevity in the sport, which is nice to see, because, and that's the same in gymnastics as well, where, you know, we almost saw, sometimes you could describe it, but flash in the pan performances, these athletes who are coming up, big performances when they're young. Actually, to have that longevity in the sport, it's great for diving, because you see these names over and over again. They get to build their personalities, build the sport, and then also for them, they can then they have more time to focus on what their future is outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Daniel Goodfellow is a great example. Remember, we were chatting to him yesterday, and yeah, we were talking. He's retired from platform and is now excelling on springboard, looking to secure his Olympic spot in the springboard. And you know, there's divers who are able to stay a little bit longer in the sport than they might have otherwise been able to because of their approach. You know, that duty of care that we have in the sport family to look after our athletes, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. You know, it's not without its challenges. Life is hard, and life as an athlete can be very challenging for different reasons at different times. So I'm delighted in the role I play in mentoring many athletes. I get to be on the front lines and I can get to hear the latest challenges. So it's great that we're able to reflect so positively in that way.
And great that we can bring that into the commentary box over the course of the next 3 days. Your insight, as always, Leon, much appreciated. We're getting things underway in this 3-metre springboard prelims for the women. Deshawn Bent Ashmel, her first dive, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, pike position.
So getting the competition underway, Deshawn Bent Ashmel, forward 2.5, 1 twist. So such beautiful board timing, even though she landed back from the end. One thing I will note there is just losing tension in her lower limbs as she goes in the water. Saw 2 feet flattering around, which the judges have caned. So 4 to 5.5. It would have been much more than that if she'd have kept her form in the lower part of her body.
So we saw 6 dives for the men in the 10-metre platform synchro. We are back down to 5 dives for the women. There's Tilly Brown, world junior bronze on the 1 metre. Her first dive, forward 2.5 somersaults, pint.
Beautifully delivered on that. It's only 2.4 degree of difficulty. So if you are going to play it safe, as Tilly is, you need to make sure the execution is right up there, which she will be receiving 7.5 maybe from the judges, because that was beautifully executed from start to finish. 1.8, that doesn't count because we take the 2 highest and 2 lowest and discount them.
Obviously, as Leon mentioned there, we've dropped a number of judges as well, back down to the 7 from the 11 that we had for the Synchronised. There's Katie Burton, City of Leeds, back 2.5 somersaults, tucked.
So the tuck position is where you're bending at the hip and at the knee, so curling up into a tight ball, as it could be elegantly described. Maybe Katie needs to squeeze into her shape a little bit more. A marginal over rotation.
So we can just see our next diver, just off of what we're seeing on the screen. Katie's score confirmed as 46.2, just adjusting the side of the springboard. Talk us through what the divers are doing there when they're adjusting that big cog.
Yeah, so that's the fulcrum. So the further back that you have it away from the end of the diving board, the slower the recoil on the springboard. The further forward, the quicker. So it's diver's preference.
Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, Yasmin Harper.
Well, she looks pretty pumped up. That was a very confident approach to the end of the board. So sometimes when you put too much effort in, you can maybe have a knee buckle or the takeoff can falter, but she was very precise and certainly look of intent as she marched down the board. Great start.
Yeah, great start for Yasmin, going top 66, already qualified for Paris in the synchro event, as we mentioned, with Scarlett Mew Jensen. Looking to get there in the individual event as well. Chloe Johnson, inward 2.5 somersaults, tucked.
So making an error there where she comes out of a dive way too early and realises too late. So squeezing in, here's the double somersault. She reaches forwards, realises that the water is where it is and not where she expected it to be. So Cody coming away with 4s.
32.4 for the athlete who competed in the GB junior team and the World Junior Champs in the platform event at the 2022 World Junior Championships. This is Clara Kerr, finalist at the Commonwealth Games. Inward 2.5 somersaults, tucked.
No back, 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists from Clara. Just checking our printout here. And that's her opening dive, just 2.4 degree of difficulty. Simple dives in all of her repertoire, maybe until the latter stages of her list of dives.
50.4 for Clara Kerr. Well, this is Elizabeth Powley. Forward 2.5 somersaults piked.
So nice steady start from Elizabeth. City Sheffield Diving Club. Always seems so happy when I see him on the poolside. It's a delight to see when athletes, even under the pressure of a competition, just kind of enjoying their time in the spotlight.
46.8 for Elizabeth Powley. Holly Mae Prasanto. Inward 2.5 somersaults tucked. 2.7 difficulty.
Oh, Holly letting that get away from her. She's another athlete who's out in the States, working hard in the collegiate system out there, enjoying a education alongside her competitive diving career, but letting that dive go amiss as she ducks ahead and considerably moves over a vertical. Judges penalising heavily.
Yeah, reflected in the score there. 36.45. Well, here's Grace Reed, back in form. One to watch in this competition. Inward 2.5 somersaults piked. Her first dive.
Yeah, beautiful. I've really been delighted to see Grace as she's progressing, finding her way once again back to glorious form. Some great results so far this year. She looks in fantastic athletic shape, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her perform throughout these prelims and into the final. Little low to the water on that opening inward 2.5 in the pike position.
Yeah, but a good score that puts her into second, 55.5. Amy Rollinson, her first dive, an inward 2.5 somersaults piked.
It's great to see Amy back at a pretty nasty thumb injury, Commonwealth medalist from 2 years ago. And that's a really nice inward 2.5 in the pike. Good distance from the diving board, little low to the water, which isn't unusual on this particular dive. Just slots in nicely alongside Grace Reed.
Yeah, in that second spot, the early stages, flying through this first round. Amelia Scott, inward 2.5 somersaults tucked.
Oh, Amelia, full of adrenaline, lots of energy, and not quite the control she needed on that dive. So has no difficulty making the dive, just the difficulty as she exits, realising she's a metre higher than maybe she was expecting. Big over rotation. She'll have some work to do to catch some of the front runners.
40.5 her score from that first dive. Amelie Underwood, Our 12th and final diver of this first round. Back 2.5 somersaults tucked.
Well, straight up and down, Emily is one of the youngest competitors in this female 3-metre contest. Head back a little bit in the tuck shape there, but it doesn't seem to affect her negatively. That'll be something she'll be working with on in the dryland diving area, or indeed on the diving boards. She's going to get some feedback from Sally Freeman, her coach, just showing the replay on the phone, taking those corrections through into the next round.
So those are the results after the first round. 4 more dives to go. Yasmin Harper leading the way. You can see Tilly Brown listed twice there. Can confirm there's only one Tilly Brown. Amy Rollinson is the other one who sits in there in second, so it's Grace Reed and Amy Rollinson tied in second. Tilly Brown sat in 4th. Yasmin Harper already stamped her place to Paris, looking to make it 2 events on her roster. Deshawn Bent Ashmill, her second dive forward, 3.5 somersaults piked.
Well, again, Deshawn, superb on the takeoff, but just breaking form at the latter part of that dive. First triple somersault is totally fine, and then for whatever reason, she just goes a little bit loose in the legs. You see them crimp, and there's a little bit scrappy into the water. What a shame, 5.5 to 6.5, but it could have easily been 6.5 upwards.
Yeah, she would have hoped for more than that. Well, here's Tilly Brown, forward, 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. 3.0 difficulty.
So neat and tidy from Tilly. So upping the degree of difficulty to 3.0. This is a complicated dive, 4, 2.5, 1 twist. She's got really nice form. 7s, maybe from the judges, just under. There we go, getting feedback from Tom, her coach at City of Sheffield Diving Club.
Yeah, just shy of those 7s. Katie Burton, next to go. Forward, 2.5 somersaults piked. Her second dive.
Straightforward dive, 2.4. This is Katie's lowest degree of difficulty. Nice. 5.5 for Katie, 39.6.
Yasmin Harper, who led the way after the first round, up next, back 2.5 somersaults piked. 3.0 difficulty.
She's certainly not holding back. Maybe a little bit too keen. So just cutting off the top of the dive, maybe. Throwing the head back aggressively, and then it's the exit of the dive. She loses form in the lower back, but she needed to pull it round. So the judges aren't going to like that a lot. You can see why, well, 4.5 to 5.5 is the spread of marks because of that kind of here and there feel to the dive.
Yeah, and it's affected things at the top. She goes second, Tilly Brown leading the way. Chloe Johnson up next, back 2.5 somersaults tucked.
Yeah, out too early. You can see head hangs when she knows, because you've got a slap on the back and back of the legs for the water, so the divers know instantly when it doesn't go the way they would hope. The feedback from the water is clear and concise.
And same from the judges as well. 25.2 for Chloe Johnson. Clara Kerr up next. Back 2.5 somersaults tucked.
Oh, well controlled. Really, really good takeoff on that one. So stays over the board, good balance. Sometimes when the divers drift further away, it's more complicated to control. She kicks those toes up quite near the springboard, but not dangerously near. And she had enough control to keep the dive from toppling over, and comes away with 1.7, mainly 6.5.
53.2. She knows this pool well, having dived here and made the final in 3 events in the Commonwealth Games. Elizabeth Powley. Inward 2.5 somersaults tucked, representing City of Sheffield Diving Club.
Yeah, steady as she goes. Elizabeth doesn't have the most complicated list of dives to perform, but what she does, she ticks along. And that's an okay second round dive as well. City of Sheffield diver.
40.5 the dive score for Elizabeth Powley. Holly Mae Prasanto, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, piked. Difficulty of 3.0. Her second most difficult dive of her series.
That's more like it. Holly had some work to do after a error on her opening round dive. And that's much better. Controlling the dive from start to finish. 2 against 7s for her effort there, and as Ellen mentioned, a higher degree of difficulty. So yeah, just shy of the 60-point mark.
Yeah, 58.5 for Prasanto, up into 5th place. And here is Grace Reed. Forward 3.5 somersaults piked, difficulty of 3.1, her most difficult dive.
Yep, I've seen it performed better by Grace in training and in competition, but it's still a good dive. That'll be plenty enough for her to take the lead now after divers earlier in the round faltering ever so slightly. And just liking what I'm seeing from a potential point of view. That's better from Grace and into the lead currently.
Yeah, 62, taking advantage of Yasmin Harper. Just dropping form slightly. Amy Rollinson, forward 3.5 somersaults piked. Another 3.1 difficulty. Her most difficult dive as well.
Well, it's good from Amy. Just takeoff is good. Spin speed has got it. Working really hard on the dive and just allowing the dive to over-rotate. So she won't be coming away with 7s, be more like 5.5s because of that tuna fish into the water. You can see the arch in the back.
Tuna fish rather than any other fish. We've got the specific type of fish as well from Leon. 55.8. Amelia Scott, forward 3.5 somersaults tucked.
See the forward 3.5, a difficult dive. Amelia choosing to at the tuck position, bending at the knee and the hip, so only 2.8 degree of difficulty as opposed to the 3.1 we saw from Grace Reed and Amy Rollinson. leaving the dive incomplete by way of short of vertical as she enters the water.
Well, Amelie Underwood, our final athlete to dive in this second round. Reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked for the Plymouth Diving Club diver.
Oh, just a little loss of form on their legs there, allowing her legs to come apart as she kicks out of the dive. Other than that, it was very neat and tidy. And she is the youngest in this competition and not being phased at all by the last diver in the round.
No, we saw it yesterday with the men, didn't we? Some surprise performers further down the field, managing that pressure of going last and that waiting so well to finish further up the field, and you can see the same there with Amelie, who's into 7th. The results after the second round of dives: Grace Reed now into the lead, 117.5. Tilly Brown and Amy Rollinson not far behind, they're tied on 111.3. Yasmin Harper in 4th on 111, so very close between that top 4. The mark that the selectors will be looking for is 290 in the prelims. We've mentioned the scores are not carried forward, but the selectors for the Olympics will have one eye on what these athletes get as part of that performing consistently that we've spoken about so often over the course of the prelims, and I'm sure we will do into the finals tomorrow and later this evening as well. Deshawn Bentashmel, her third dive, back 2.5 somersault pite. Kicking us off in the third round.
Well, again, same kind of story unfolding for Deshawn. Fantastic by way of takeoff. Ample spin speed, just not the finesse and control on the bottom of the dive, allowing that one to over-rotate as well, which means she'll be penalised heavily by the judges when, you know, 7s were right in her grasp, but she comes away with 4.5s and 5s.
Yeah, resulting in a 43.5 dive score. Tilly Brown's right up there in the mix. This her third round dive, reverse 2.5 somersaults pite. Can she keep pace at the top?
Well, no, she can't. Not with that third round dive there from Tilly. Reverse 2.5 in the pike position. She seems okay, but then comes out of the dive way too early and leaves the dive drastically short of vertical. She won't get more than 3s, I don't think, on that. 2.5, 3.5, and 28.5 is a pretty, low score.
Well, she's been heavily penalised then. She'll have to do some work in the latter rounds to make that back out. This Katie Burton with a reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked, her third round dive.
But it was okay from Katie, reverse 2.5 in the tuck position. Takeoff was okay, just a little bit scruffy, losing the form, as you see there in the knees, the lower back and even the feet as she entered the water, which is the last thing the judges will see.
37.8 for Katie Burton. Third as things stand. Here is Yasmin Harper, already booked her place to Paris. Inward 2.5 somersaults pite. She's done so in the synchro event. Can she make it there in the individual?
That was very well executed. See Ross, the loudest teammate, qualifying for the men's 3-metre final. He's here to support Yasmin and all the others. In fact, there's 5 divers from the City of Sheffield Diving Club in this contest out of a total of 11. That's good from Yasmin.
Yeah, plenty of divers in the crowd as well who we're expecting to see later as well. 66 the dive score for Yasmin. Back top of the table. Chloe Johnson, forward 3.5 somersaults tucked, difficulty of 2.8. Her equal most difficult dive.
Oh goodness, I did manage to keep my exclamation silent then. I knew that was going to be an absolute shot. Oh goodness, you can see there, way overbalanced. Only just got her feet on the end of the diving board. Incredible that she managed to attempt that dive and complete it. It's not unusual for the divers to fall off the side of the board in that situation. Look at the scores, just 1, 1.5. A total of 11.2. You can see the exasperation on her face.
Yeah, extreme disappointment there. Clara Kerr, reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked.
I really like Clara's board timing, working hard. Up in Edinburgh Diving Club, under the watchful eye of Jen Leeming. Really, really solid when it comes to her technical proficiency, giving her a real chance on the end of the dive there. Of course, if you're all over the place on the takeoff, look at that, 6 bingo.
Yeah, great score. 50.4 into second. That's good for Clara Kerr. Elizabeth Powley up next, back 2.5 somersaults tucked, difficulty of 2.8.
Yep, passable, ticking along, back 2.5 in the tuck position. Waiting, quite high on her shins there, could be due with her hands further down so she can pull into the tuck shape a little bit more aggressively and she'll get an easier time then.
40.6 her dive score. Well, 12 athletes in this field and 12 spaces in the final. All these athletes guaranteed a place. So a good opportunity just to tighten up some things before the final tomorrow. Holly May Prasanto, forward 3.5 somersaults piked for the Scottish national champion.
So letting that one go as well, so it's a lot of effort required. Holly using a bit of forward momentum, so leaning for the diving board, gets a good kick from the diving board, but just carries that all the way over, almost into a forward roll, if any of you have ever done that in gymnastics. Not so good for diving.
41.85. Prasanto into 5th. Grace Reed, reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. 3.0 difficulty.
Well, that should be enough to see her reclaim top spot thus far in the prelim. Marginally short vertical. Little bit of splash being thrown at. Maybe the judges won't go with her. I'm expected to see 7s, but actually only 6.5s, which means she just nudges up right behind Yasmin Harper of City of Sheffield.
Well, just 1 point between them now. Grace Reed in second, Yasmin Harper top spot at the minute. Amy Rollinson, reverse 2.5 somersaults piked, her 3rd round dive.
So Amy again finding her way as she goes. There's that nasty injury that I mentioned already, so quite a bit of time out, heavily strapped on the hands because of the injury and also subsequent surgery to the thumb ligament. There's a lot of time out, but she's finding her way back in, got a high degree of difficulty, which will serve her.
Amelia Scott back 2.5 somersaults tucked for the City of Sheffield athletes.
That's straight up and down from Amelia. Didn't quite go so well in her second round dive. That one's a little better. Edging herself back into it. And of course, qualification is a guarantee.
44.8 for Amelia Scott, our penultimate athlete in the third round. And here is our final athlete, Amelie Underwood, forward 3.5 somersaults tucked. Multiple medals at the British Junior Elites.
I really like her diving. I'd love to find out more about her background, whether she has a gymnastics background. She looks strong and athletic, considering she is the youngest competitor. And she's finding her way around these dives, you know, with ease, and doesn't seem phased by being in this competition.
No, absolutely not. Pushes herself up into 5th, so she's jumped up a space as well in the course of that third round. So one to watch from further down the order. But she does find herself on the first page of results, sat in 5th. There is your top 3. Still not much in it at all. Yasmin Harper and Grace Reed separated by just 1 point between them. Amy Rollinson slightly off the pace there in 3rd. Clara Kerr in 4th. And on to the next page, and you can see, unfortunately, down at the bottom, Chloe Johnson has retired, withdrawn due to shin splints, and we wish her well for her recovery. We're into the 4th and penultimate round now. Deshawn Bent-Ashmill, reverse 2.5 somersaults in the pike position.
That's more like it, Deshawn. Thank you for tidying things up. I'm sure you'll be as delighted as I am, and I know your coach will be as well. Just realising some of her potential. I mentioned on the first 3 rounds of dives that Deshawn was just losing form unnecessarily. That's a bit more like it. Starting to see what she's capable of. She sells seashells. It's your shin splints you've passed on to me, Ellen.
That's like the athletes in this prelim warming up. Here's Tilly Brown, a back 2.5 somersaults piked, her penultimate dive. World Junior bronze medalist on the 1 metre.
Oh, not so good from Tilly. Takeoff was all right. It was always going to be low to the ground, or low to the water, and results in running out of room. The water comes up to meet her. Just needed a 3.5 metre springboard, would have been perfect there.
Well, dive score of 30. In 4th as things stand. Here's Katie Burton, inward 2.5 somersaults tucked. 2.7 the difficulty.
That's nicely slotted in. Good takeoff, safe distance from the diving board. Inward 2.5 in the tuck position. Ever so slightly washing over of vertical.
44 0.55 for Katie Burton. Just shares a fist bump there. Well, Yasmin Harper looking to extend the gap at the top. It's only 1 point at the minute. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked for the City of Sheffield athlete. Currently leads the way.
Very nice from Yasmin. Beautifully drilled reverse 2.5 in the pike position. And still really up for that takeoff, but she's just got that little bit of kind of relaxed concentration going on, so she doesn't go flying over a vertical, which is one of the dangers when you attack the dive. So nice knowing smile there. I was just observing, seeing how she's kind of relaxing into it now. You come out with a point to prove, but then you kind of ease into it.
Yeah, currently on course for that standard that they're looking for. Here's Clara Kerr, inward 2.5 somersaults tucked for an ultimate dive.
Yeah, same comment really from me. I'm just really enjoying watching her technical proficiency on all of the takeoffs. So not the most complicated list of dives, so she's choosing most of the dives in the tuck position, so giving away degree of difficulty, but holding her own when it comes to the execution marks.
And that's the nice thing about these championships, isn't it? We get an opportunity to see some athletes who we wouldn't usually see on the international stage.
Absolutely.
Well, Elizabeth Powley up next, reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked. Her penultimate dive.
So Elizabeth losing her board timing ever so slightly there. I don't know whether you also noticed the kind of stamp of the diving board, which reverberates and doesn't give you the recoil that you would be used to or indeed need to complete the dive. So you can see she's still smiling, touches her way, but realises that that was under par on this occasion.
Yeah, well supported by her City of Sheffield teammates here. One of them is up next, Holly Mae Prasanto. Back 2.5 somersaults tucked for her 4th round dive.
Well, that'll help her slightly nudge herself back up the rankings. She's had a little bit of a mixed performance out there today. Nothing quite going her way. That one a little bit more like it.
47.6, but a little shake of the head as she is under the shower. She looks very focused, doesn't she? And all these athletes already qualified for the final. So an opportunity after this just to sharpen things up before we get there. Grace Reed, back 2.5 somersaults piked. Twice Commonwealth Games gold medalist, 2-time Olympian. Her 4th round dive.
Just holding that marginally short as she entered the water. Takeoff is good. Maybe just a little overcautious thinking that she didn't want to over-rotate, and then just stops the dive ever so slightly short, losing her feet as she went in. The judges, 5.5, 6, those are the correct allocation of marks, in my opinion.
So into second, but Yasmin Harper, that gap is now quite considerable at the top. Amy Rollinson, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. 3.0 difficulty.
Well, that will help Amy. That's a higher degree of difficulty at 3.0, which is a pretty standard for female pike list of international standard, which of course Amy is. Coming back from some time out and just repolishing these dives, I would say.
48 the dive score. She's someone who's performed well here in the past, twice a national champion, Commonwealth Games world and European medalist as well. Amelia Scott, reverse, 2.5 somersaults tucked, difficulty of 2.8.
Reverse 2.5 in the tuck position. Again, not quite coming out at the right time. So Amelia will come away with less than 5s from the judges because she ended up short of vertical.
Well, let's take a look at the scores. Yeah, 33.6 for Amelia Scott. And on to our final athlete in the 4th round, Amelie Underwood, forward, 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist pike, her most difficult dive. Impressed so far. What can she do here in the 4th round?
She's good, isn't she? Again, I'm delighted to be commentating on such a young athlete with so much potential. As mentioned, that's her most complicated dive, so just showed you that she's working on the complicated dives ready to show them in years to come. Well done, Amelie.
49.5 for Amelie Underwood. That concludes our 4th round. And she's looking good, isn't she? And I'm sure there'll be lots of positive words as she just watches back the footage with her coach. Well, 1 round left to go, and here are the standings. Yasmin Harper, 244.5. Well, the mark that the selectors for the Olympics are looking for in the prelims is 290. So if she can perform like she has done in the last round, she should be well over that mark. Grace Reed in 2nd, 228.5. Amy Rollinson still slightly off the pace. And Clara Kerr, finalist in the Commonwealth Games here, over 1 metre, 3 metre and 3 synchros. She is in 4th. There you can see the athletes towards the bottom of the order, a lot of them gaining valuable experience, and they all get to come back for the finals, which particularly when you look at the age of some of these athletes is a huge opportunity, a huge experience to be watched as well by the selectors for the Commonwealth Games, or not Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games and the Europeans. It's a busy summer, it's not quite that busy. Deshan Bent Ashmael, her final dive inward, 2.5 somersaults in the pike position.
Saving the best till last. Deshan, first 3 rounds were a little bit and then stepping up in the 4th and finishing strongly in the 5th. So she will feature in the final. She'll need to step up, which she's capable of, in order to challenge for the medals.
Of course, these positions affecting the order in which the athletes will dive tomorrow as well. 57, the dive score for her final dive. Tilly Brown, an inward 2.5 somersaults piked. Well supported by her City of Sheffield teammates in the stands.
Solid final round dive from Tilly Brown as well. In the 2.5 in the pike position. A little lower to the water than Deshan, who performed the same dive, but neat and tidy. Judges will look favourably upon that.
Tilly Brown, her final dive score, 55.5. Her final score, 225.3. That's her total after 5 rounds. Katie Burton, forward, 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. 3.0 the difficulty, her most difficult dive, left till last.
Oh, she had all sorts of almost Well, she was fancy footwork required to get on the end of the diving board. Bit of Michael Flatterly there, fast feet to try and get back on. Oh goodness, she did well to even attempt that dive. The river dance, that's what I was looking for.
Well, reflected unfortunately in the scores, 27 for Katie Burton, a final total of 195.15. Well, here is the one to watch, Yasmin Harper, best performer so far, forward 3.5 somersaults in the pike position.
Not quite as good from Yasmin. She really needed, ironically, to get after the start on that one, and seemed just as though she was holding back ever so slightly. Maybe she saw the diver before her faltering completely on the takeoff. So that's going to be close to the 300 mark. Is it going to break it?
Well, it hasn't broken the 300 mark, but when we're looking at Olympic qualification, importantly, it's 7.2 over what she needed, the 290. So she's put herself in a good position going into tomorrow. Here's Clara Kerr, forward 3.5 somersaults tucked. 2.8 the difficulty.
Oh, that's the first mistake we've seen from Clara, isn't it? I've been very complimentary of her technique, and I still am. That takeoff is good enough, but the error is made where she reaches forwards too far there, thinking she has more time than she did, ended up considerably short.
Yeah, struggling in that final dive for the Commonwealth Games finalist, just at 23.8. She hears the feedback. A total of 230.45 is Elizabeth Bowley, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist in the pike position.
Wow, that's her biggest dive by quite a way. And delighted to say that she's saved the best for last as well in the last round of dives. That will be her highest scoring dive, or one of, certainly. Very well put together. Although it's a bit of a mix of marks, isn't it? A 4.5 to 6, so that's why we discount 2 highest, 2 lowest scores to average them out. So 5s is our average.
Holly Mae Prasanto, her final dive. Reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked. Difficulty 2.8. A 3-metre springboard British Elite Junior champion. Looking for a big dive in her final round here in the prelims.
That was the best dive we've seen from Holly in this morning's prelims. Rounds 1 to 4 were just a little bit here and there, whereas that round 5 dive, reverse 2.5 in the tuck position, she's kept control and accuracy, and she'll come away with 6.5. Yeah, 6.5. Good dive to finish.
236.2 her final total. And here is Grace Reed, currently sat in second. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, piked.
Well, beautiful dive. I think that'll be enough to catch Yasmin, and at the same time just go over the suggested score for Olympic consideration. So beautiful dive to finish from Grace, showing some of the sparkle that we've seen earlier this year. Wow, there we go, look at that.
69, a huge dive score, a total of 297.5, so 0.3 above Yasmin Harper. There's not much in it, and if that's a sign of what we've got to come in the final, it's going to be one exciting final indeed. Amy Rollinson, back 2.5 somersaults piked, another 3.0 difficulty.
Just ever so short there from Amy. You can see her fighting back to the form that she enjoyed pre-injury. Just need a little bit more height, a little bit more spin speed required on that dive. She was just, again, in need of that 3.5 metre springboard for that dive to work.
42, her dive score. Amelia Scott, penultimate diver, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, her final dive.
Very good from Amelia to finish. She will finish in the final place of the, well, one of the final few places of the rankings. But of course, all divers progress to the final. We started with 12, we only have 11 now. Withdrawal halfway through from Chloe Johnson.
So total of 203.5 for Amelia Scott, meaning she will be one of the earlier divers to dive in the final. And here's Amelie Underwood, our final diver, inward 2.5 somersaults in the tuck position.
Well, she backed off a little bit on her takeoff there. Shoulders maybe wanting to dip over the board, so she noticed that and then shoves her hips back with quite a bit of force, and therefore that affects her entry into the water. So she's moving a little bit too far away from the diving board, affecting the controls. So she'll only come away with 5.5, but that's great, isn't it? Youngest competitor ends up in 5th position.
Yeah. And that'll serve her well tomorrow. She'll be going in the middle of the order, and that's probably a position that, as a younger diver, do you think she'll be happy with where she is?
I think she'll just be delighted to be in the final. You know, even though all athletes could, you know, go through. When you're that young, you're just like, well, I'm in it. That's great. Let's just see what happens. And no thinking required.
No, and I think she's thrived well under that lack of pressure, hasn't she? She certainly looks happy. Coach looks happy as well, and although there's a few things that they can tweak and build on, that's exactly what they've got the next 24 hours to do, just to go through those processes.
Or alternatively, just go watch some TV
Go
and
watch some
relax
TV.
and forget about it all. Yeah, that's one of the methods.
That tends to be your... Is that what you'd tend to do?
Yeah, I think that you can't, you know, you've got to review the dives and evaluate them and forget you ever did them, because the most important dive is the next dive, and I think that's the mindset.
Absolutely. Well, Grace Reed coming through with a huge final round dive to just pit Yasmin Harper to top spot. Both of those, though, importantly, over the standard that the selectors are looking for the Olympic Games in the prelim rounds. That mark was 290, and they've gone over that. They're so close to the 300. They'll need 310 in the final, so that is where those adjustments will need to be made. But Grace Reed, Yasmin Harper, our top two. Deshaun Ben Ashmail as well, coming through quite well towards the end, taking 3rd spot. 258.4, those your top 3. We will be seeing all the athletes return to the final tomorrow, though. 12 spaces for the final, 11 athletes, and all of them will be returning. And what a big opportunity for some of our youngsters in this field to compete, and you never know what will happen. They could be in with a shot of getting a podium place and in turn a medal here at the Speedo Aquatics GB Diving Championships. Well, the crowd's starting to dissipate from the Sandwell Aquatics Centre. We will be back, though, this evening. Do join us 10 to 6. We have the men's 3-metre springboard and women's platform finals. All the action to come later this evening. 10 to 6. Do join us then.